Welcome back, guys. Today I want to talk all about carpeting plants and how to get a really nice carpet in your tank, because I think it's one of the things that most people want to know or want to have related to plants. And so here we can see pretty much my favorite tank right now, the 33 long. It has this really nice looking glossostigma carpet. And so we're going to talk about this tank, some of the things that I've had to go through to get to that. If you guys have been following along, you kind of know the journey already, but we're going to be talking about all factors surrounding how I've gotten to this point, because I'm going to go ahead and say it, like, this is one of the best carpets I've ever grown. If we zoom in here and check out all this new growth, everything just looks phenomenal. I'm really surprised that I was able to do this, to be honest with you. And so I want to share with you how I was able to get to this point. We got the little 8.8 gallon cube over here. This is a little setup made by Aquarium. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you saw that I posted a yes or no poll if I should get this tank, and it was overwhelmingly yes. And before I even posted that, I kind of knew that I wanted to get it. So this thing is pretty cool. We'll talk about this in another video. Of course, set it up. I don't know if it's going to live here or not, but let's go ahead and get back to this. So the first tip I have, and I know I've done a video that's kind of similar to this, but we will touch on a few different things as it's more related to this particular case. Tip number one, make sure you have good lighting or appropriate lighting. Notice that I don't necessarily say have high lighting, which is something that people always talk about if you want to grow a carpeting plant, which they usually tend to be more difficult plants. If you want to grow those types of plants, a lot of times people say, oh, you need to have high light. The problem with that is that it's not that it's not true, it's that highlight is kind of like this arbitrary thing that a lot of people, especially if they're new to the hobby, they don't really know what highlight is, or comparing one fixture to the other. Is this one going to have highlight, or is this one? Because the specific data isn't always provided, at least not yet. And so on this tank, we do have a medium to highlight scenario, and it's basically because the tank is so shallow. So up here we have a Phoenix Planted Plus SE fixture that when you run it on max does provide a good amount of light. It's not the most high output fixture that you can get. The Fluval 2.0s they're capable of throwing a lot more par. I've never had my hands on one to check the par, but that's what I've heard. And so basically, because this tank is only about, I think it's like 12 inches. Again, this is a 33 long, so it's really close to being a 55 if we just doubled the height. Okay, not quite, but you get the point. So this fixture putting out its maximum amount of light, if we get down here to the substrate, we have enough PAR, enough photosynthetically active radiation to get good growth out of this specific plant. Again, this is the glossostigma. Okay, so if we had this on, say, a 55, if we were using this same fixture, then we would have less than half the light reaching that plant. And that plant might not like that. And as a result, it might grow a lot taller and be less bushy, and basically we would have not as thick of a carpet. Okay, and that's obviously not what we want. In this tank as well, we have dwarf hairgrass, and you can see it's also carpeting really well. I wish it was actually not in this aquarium, but and that's just because I wanted to have a really perfectly uniform kind of look, at least with just having one type of plant being the glosso in here. But it ends up not looking too bad. I don't it's not distracting enough to really bother me. But the hairgrass is also doing really well. It's carpeted nicely here in this front, and you'll notice that it's not super leggy or tall or anything. A lot of plants, not all of them, but it seems like a lot of these carpeting plants, when they don't get enough light, they do start to reach for it. And that's not what we want. So let's take another look. Over here in the jungle tank, we also have some of the same dwarf hairgrass, and you'll notice, you might be able to notice, it's a lot taller. So in a previous video, I did a big trim on this tank, and that's something that we'll touch on here later in the video as far as one of the things that's important for carpeting. But this is a tank that has a lower light input, same type of fixture. I don't know, it might be actually the same height, but I have it dialed down so there's not as much light, and of course we did have a ton of foliage covering this hair grass to prevent, you know, keep that light even lower. And you'll notice that this stuff is one taller, even though I just trimmed it, but the other thing is that it's a lot thinner. You know, we can see substrate in between the patches. Let's see if we can. I got a lot of organics up on the top of my water. My pump failed, but you can tell that that's, you know, it doesn't look bad because, you know, if you step back, the tank still looks fairly carpeted, but that may or may not be what you want. So having high light combined with the other things we're going to talk about will help to prevent this kind of patchy feel that this carpet has. The second thing I think you really need to invest in if you want to have a successful carpet is a good substrate. Okay, so you guys know me, if you've been following along, you know that I'm a huge fan of using soil, earthworm castings, something that's nutrient organic rich as a bottom layer. And then I've been experimenting with different caps for that soil. In this tank we have Akadama. In the tank we just looked at, there's just some Monterey beach sand as the cap. But this stuff is, the Akadama is really nice. It kind of acts as a nutrient sponge, so it can, you know, remove nutrients from the water column as well as the substrate below, and just provide even more to the plant. So having a substrate, if you think about it, it makes complete sense, right? Because you're growing a plant that has a crazy intricate root structure and a huge root structure at that, right? If I went in here and I pulled up on the corner, it would just be a big mat of roots, and we could probably cut squares like a cake out of this stuff and pull it out. That's how dense the root structure is going to be. And so having nutrients available down at that root system is going to be really important to get a plant to spread out. Okay, now it's not 100% required. I'm just saying that if you want to have the best shot at getting a carpet that you really like, it helps to do all these little extra things. And so, you know, if we're talking about substrate and nutrients, the same thing can be said with, you know, having CO2 injection, adding fertilizers. This tank obviously does have CO2 injection, as well as I've been adding, you know, a complete, or, you know, macro and micro fertilizer to the tank. And a combination of all those things, you know, it being balanced too, all really helps to get a carpet. It can get kind of confusing, you know, if you're tallying up all these things. It's been 2 tips, but there's kind of a lot going on here, right? So I'm hoping that things are making a little bit more sense, and you can kind of get an understanding of the, you know, the things you need to check off to get something like this. Over here in the recently rescaped shrimp tank, Shrimp Mountain, of course, that we moved and put into the aquarium lab, we have some hair grass in here as well. And so I'll put up a picture of what it looked like before we trimmed it, but kind of like right after we planted it. So I had some that was growing in a tub, and I, you know, transplanted it, let it grow for a couple days. I mean, it didn't really do much in those couple of days, but then I trimmed it, and then this is like 2 weeks later, and you guys can see what the trimming has done to at least start to initiate the spread of this hair grass. So it's a lot thicker, kind of, well, I mean, it's not really thick, but you get what I mean. Like, you can see little blades that are starting to fill in between the main clumps that we have in here. And that's, you know, over the next couple of weeks, it's really going to start to fill in. Trimming is really important because whenever you cut any type of vertical growth off of a plant, it's going to send hormones down to the roots and sort of trigger the spread of those roots, and thus new shoots with these carpeting plants. Okay? And so that's really going to help to kind of trick the plant into doing what you want it to do. That's the third tip, by the way. I don't know if I said that, but trimming your plants, number 3. That's really all you have to do, guys. If you guys didn't see the video where I showed off all the baby Kurai tetras that I have in this tank, you guys should go check that out, but there's like at least 20 in here, okay? After the big trim, like a ton more of them came out, or something happened. So originally I thought there was like 10 or maybe 12 in here, but there's double that easy, so I'm super pumped. I'm just gonna kind of keep firing off tips here as they come up. I wanted to highlight something in here. A lot of you guys have Anubias Nana, Nana Petite, Cophifolia, stuff like that, the common ones. Check this out. So if you're ever curious as to why your Nana Petite loses its leaves and just kind of disintegrates, like look at that. See if we can pull it out. That's some rhizome rot, as I call it. And all of these plants were healthy before we moved them and put them in the tank. The rhizomes of these plants are really easy to damage. Okay, so literally just by taking a healthy plant and wedging it into a rock and doing it a little too aggressively, even if you can't see an abrasion on the rhizome, is sometimes all it takes to start an infection, whether it's bacterial or fungal. I don't know if anybody knows. It looks fungal, but it could easily be a bacterial thing. That's something to look out for, because that's a really great way to waste a lot of money, especially if you spend, primo bucks on Anubias. This stuff can be expensive, so watch out for that. That's something that it can take a while to happen, but it's definitely happened a little bit in here. Need to do a water change and move some stuff around. I'm really just wanting that hair grass to grow. One more thing I gotta mention about carpets, just in case you haven't been following along, guys, is there are some methods that you can use to get your carpet started, and you can only apply it when you're setting up a new tank. Okay, so for this tank, we did an immersed setup, which I should actually go show you. We did a setup very similar to this, where we plant our carpeting plants and we cover it with saran wrap, and that's just a way to have maximum CO2 in here, and it just promotes a really quick growth of the carpet, gets things rooted really fast, and you can have a higher success rate with it. Yeah, it's definitely been a lot easier for me to start tanks doing it this way. So that's another thing that you can do. If you want to know more information about that, you can go check out the setup video for the 33-gallon tank, the bonsai tree tank, if you haven't seen it. But like this, this has been a month in here and it's almost ready to fill up. But we have some taller growth here in the back. I'm gonna go in here probably today with some scissors and do a trim on this. Just leave all the scraps in here because they have a chance of rooting themselves in all the in-between places. And then we'll probably just wait another week or two before filling the tank up. But that's another really great way to kind of, you gotta put the time in, you gotta invest, something in it. Basically just time. Waiting, which I have a hard time doing because I really want to get some fish in here, but it can help a lot with getting the look that you want your tank to have. I hope you guys learned something new about carpets. Maybe you got a new tip that you didn't know about, maintaining it or getting it to grow or, anything like that. That's the whole point of me doing this. There will be links to all the stuff like the Phoenix fixture and just all the stuff that I run on this tank to get it looking the way it is. Those links help me out a ton, guys. I get a little commission when you buy anything on Amazon after you go through those links. Thanks a ton for watching today, guys. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe because we're going to be starting a bunch of new projects here after the new year starts. I'm really excited. And what do you know? The 8.8 is now missing. Where did it go? I don't know. We're going to get to that super soon. Thanks again, guys, one more time for hanging in there with me today. And we'll see you next time.